So I'm now going to welcome up Jess Redway. Jess is an ECM specialist for APA. APA is Australia's leading infrastructure business, transporting gas, electricity and generating electricity as well from renewable assets. So welcome, Jess. Do you want to come and have a seat? So you've been at APA for a little while now. Do you want to tell us how long you've been there and what's your role?
Yep, sure. So thank you for having me to start with. I've been at APA now for a little over 13 years. I've always worked in the document management space. I'm currently in the role of ECM specialist. So that's a really interesting role because I sit directly in the business and I work really closely with our internal IT department and our external ECM providers, basically bridging that gap between technology and our day-to-day users.
Great. And which OT products are you using at the moment and what are the main use cases for them?
Yep, so we use ECM Content Server and also XECM for engineering, and our core focus is controlled engineering documentation. So I'm talking technical drawings, specifications, manuals, operating procedures. It's anything that's critical in operating and maintaining our assets. So one of the things we use a lot with the XECM for engineering is the CRT dashboard and its strict revision control requirements that are on it. One of our biggest challenges with engineering documents is making sure that our users are using the latest revisions necessary. So when you're dealing with the complex infrastructure at the scale that we do, it's not just inconvenient to our users that they're using later revisions, it's actually a really serious safety risk. We also rely heavily on the transmittal module to share documents with our external parties. We make sure that it maintains full traceability. So this is anything from sending specifications to our vendors, updated process flow diagrams to our regulators. We need to know who received those documents, what they received, and when they received them. It's extremely critical for visibility from an auditing perspective.
And coming into this conversation, you did mention to me the volume of records you've got under management. Do you want to just share that with us?
Yeah, I can. So at the moment we've got, or it was about 6 months ago, we surpassed 1 million controlled documents in our ECM and 2.5 million objects. So when we talk about APA, we have about 2,000 assets nationwide. They go as far northwest as Karratha and southeast as Launceston. So we're everywhere.
Wow. That's a lot of documents to have under management that you have to review quite regularly and have all that audit trail around as well with all of those revisions. So pretty amazing that you're doing all of that in the one system. So can you tell us about a game changer project that you've undertaken in the last couple of years and how's that impacted your users?
Yep, sure. So just before I get to the game changer, we'll just go back to the beginning real quick. We implemented OpenText at the very end of 2018. It's in November. So 2019 was really spent onboarding our users, getting them familiar with the system, training, all that kind of stuff. Then it was 2020. I don't know about you, but that felt like a completely lost year. We just maintained stability on ECM. That was really our focus. We needed to make sure that it was solid and reliable and that our users actually trusted what was in it and they trusted the system. So once that was achieved, we turned our attention to something we called ECM 2.0. So we planned for this at the back end of 2022 and then we rolled it out in the first week of 2023. So internally, what was ECM 2.0? Internally, we marketed it as an ECM upgrade. However, it wasn't a technical upgrade, as we would all know of an upgrade, but for our users, they didn't know that. But what we did was we switched on ECM Smart View. So at that point, all of those users were using Classic View, and we changed it over for them to Smart View. We created perspectives that were tailored to those users. We made it intuitive by putting the key information that they needed front and centre every time they entered the system. And why did we get to that? It was from user feedback. So in the years prior, we really made a point to listen to what our users had to say. We paid attention to what worked, what frustrated them, and what would make their experience better. So one of the key things that we did in 2.0, and that Smart View change-out, was improve searching. So our users would get frustrated with the amount of results when they'd run a search. So typically, in our use case, our users want to search on an engineering document. They know the number, they just want to put that number in and find it. By default, the OpenText search is going to give you every time that document is mentioned in another document. So what we did was we created a custom widget, and that was the only thing that they could search on was that number field. It searched across multiple fields that had numbers because we have alt numbers, vendor numbers, etc. And it's just huge for them. It significantly reduced the pain point, and it made finding their key documents a lot faster. And then the impact. So the impact has been huge from both system logins and content in the system. So I already mentioned the 1 million documents that we surpassed, and that really goes to show how much our users are trusting that the data in there is accurate, and when they find old data, they give it to us because they know that ECM is that single source of truth. We also had a huge uptake on system logins. So for the 6 months after ECM 2.0 went live, compared to the 6 months the year before, we had over 35% more logins in ECM. Users were able to find their documents faster, they can now navigate more efficiently, and overall they're getting much more value out of ECM. And for us, it really reinforced that idea that a well-designed interface with user input can really make all the difference in adoption and engagement.
It's like a completely different system, isn't it? Going from classic to smart. So if anyone hasn't done that yet, very well worthwhile. Okay, and so you mentioned earlier as well that you're using business workspaces. So what are you doing with business workspaces, and how is it helpful?
Yeah, so we use business workspaces. There's 2 separate scenarios for it. So the first one is project templating. So we template all of our projects, major projects, stay in business projects with business workspaces. And that gives us the folder structure and the permissions that are required straight away. So every project is consistent, and we've got the right governance there from day one on those projects. Our second use case is every single one of our assets, so the 2,000 assets, have their own business workspace. So although we don't do it now, it does set up that potential integration with our asset system. But the key for us is that all of the documents relevant to that asset are within that workspace, and that is the single source of truth.
Fantastic. Those business workspaces are the exact starting point that you will be able to use to get value out of Content Aviator when you're ready to go there. And so you also have some fairly unique integrations with your ECM platform. Do you want to tell us about those?
Yeah, so we integrate with a couple of systems, but I'll just touch on one. So our GIS, or our Geographic Information System, it's basically the maps, a map of Australia, and then someone pinpoints latitude, longitudes of all of our assets. So our teams can go into GIS, they can find those assets that they're looking for, and they can just simply click through to OpenText and find all the information that they need. So again, having all of that information in those structured workspaces really makes it easy for those teams to do that.
Fantastic. And I know that it's something that those of us who've worked with the product for a long time, we saw in earlier iterations lots of examples of people, deploying maps inside of their business workspaces. It's great to hear that it's useful and that you can then surface that up somewhere that makes sense for the users. Okay, and what's next, would you say, for APA with ECM?
Yep. So what's next? Our next one is going to be called ECM 3.0. So I know we had 2.0, we're just going straight into 3.0. But we are really excited about it, and we've got a bunch of things that we're planning on doing for that. I'll just touch on a couple of the examples because we won't have time for all of them. But we're also, as is Sharon, looking at the OpenText mobile app. So our users, we're obviously so remote, we've got users all over the country, and the goal there is to give them access to the documents that they need right from their phone and their tablet. And that's going to be a game changer for efficiency and their response times. We're also looking at an upgrade, so we'll upgrade our content server to whatever the N-1 version is at the time. And another big one is an XECM for engineering upgrade. So we're aware that there's been some significant changes to X engineering, and we're carefully planning that now to make sure that that transition is smooth for our users, because that's going to have a significant impact. And the last one is obviously AI. So we've got a massive amount of documents. Our oldest asset was built in the 60s, so that's now 60 years of content that sits around OpenText. And we had that great demo earlier where they demonstrated it in the workspaces, so we're really keen to have that in our system. It would be like one of our users saying, tell me which vendor has provided valves on this asset over its lifetime. Being able to find those results accurately would be a huge time saver, and it's the exact innovation we want to bring to our users.
Fantastic. It's just been really great hearing from you today, Jess, and very inspiring to see the custom integrations at play, and a lot ahead for you guys, I think, with the upgrade and potentially Content Aviator as well.
It's very exciting times. Thanks for having me, Susan.
Thanks.
Thank you.